My Lords, I want to enthusiastically endorse these amendments and thank the noble Lords Moylan, Pannick, MacDonald and Sandhurst for raising this crucial issue. This issue of non-crime hate incidents has been of concern to a number of us for some years, and it's good that at last it's getting some parliamentary attention. I'd like to particularly credit those organisations and publications that have persistently raised this in the public realm and whose research informs my remarks, especially the Free Speech Union, of which I'm on the Advisory Council, the anti-racist campaign Don't Divide Us, and Spiked Online. As an issue, though, it's one that too many avoid because it is rather tricky and contentious. And one of the reasons it's difficult to raise is because nobody wants to look as though they're being soft on hate incidents. But I'm concerned that this has led to itself a degree of chilling self-censorship and allowed some confusion to arise between what is a crime and what's not a crime when the police are involved. Instinctively, when the public hear the phrase hate or hate crime or hate incident, we think of, for example, someone being beaten up because of their skin colour and we're appalled, or we think, for example, of someone being harassed in the street because they're gay and we're shocked, and we assume the worst kind of bigotry, and our instinct is that something must be done. But it's actually not so clear-cut. According even to the hate crime operational guidance issued by the College of Policing, hate crime is often an entirely subjective category itself, based on the perception of the alleged victim, and I'll come back to this. But what's extraordinary about the guidance on hate crime is that what the police consider to be successfully tackling hate crime, the guidance says this. It says, targets that see success as reducing hate crime are not appropriate, which just completely befuddled me. But rather, the police measure, they say, that their success is by increasing the opportunities for victims to report. But I fear that in this act of enthusiasm to get more people to report hate, the police have been muddying any clear distinction between what is criminal and what is not. The focus on reporting initiatives has led earlier this year to rainbow-coloured hate crime police cars patrolling local areas with the aim of giving communities the confidence to come forward and report hate crime. However well-meaning, such awareness-raising initiatives often encourage people to come forward and report things that aren't crimes at all. In fact, earlier this year, a police digital ad van trawled around the Wirral warning that, quote, being offensive is an offence. But actually, being offensive is not a criminal offence. After a backlash, local police clarified that this was an error. But why did the police get this so wrong in terms of what is a crime? And this isn't an isolated incident. A few years ago, Greater Glasgow Police tweeted an ominous warning, "Think before you post, or you may receive a visit from us this weekend." And they posted that alongside a graphic that warned social media users to consider if their tweets were true, hurtful, unkind, necessary, and then right at the end, illegal. Then there was the South Yorkshire Police Hate Hurts campaign that asked people to report any, quote, offensive or insulting social media posts to police officers. My Lords, none of these are crimes, and I think that in a bill named the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill, it is a concern if the police don't know what is or isn't a crime when it comes to hate. So much so that Cheshire Police recently admitted to conflating crime and non-crime in its hate crime statistics. So this amendment can potentially start unpicking this muddle, because I think the source of the confusion of what's a crime or not lies in the creation of the category non-crime hate incident. As we've heard, a category that was established by the College of Policing. And its guidance actually encourages police officers, I think, to overreach and police non-crimes. I think it's worth telling, my Lords, how this is posed in the guidance. The NCHI's guidance states, when it is established that a criminal offence has not taken place, but the victim or any other person perceives that the incident was motivated wholly or partly by hostility, it should be recorded and flagged as a non-crime hate incident. Note that use of the word victim used to describe the reporter or accuser, when there's no evidence existing that any crime has been perpetrated against him or her. And the victim only has to claim that some action or speech was motivated wholly or partly by hostility. Hostility itself, a very vague and subjective term. The victim, and I quote, and listen to this, does not have to justify or provide evidence of their belief for the purpose of reporting, and police officers or staff should not directly challenge perception. Furthermore, this can be the basis for any other person's perception, so even further removed from any real incident, let alone crime. Finally, the guidance notes that, quote, police officers may also identify a non-crime hate incident even when the victim or others do not. Why? Because victims may not be aware that they are the victim of a non-crime hate incident, even though it's clear to others. I'm afraid I do find this a kind of dystopian Orwellian nightmare world. And for this, untangling your way through that, your name, unbeknown to you, can appear on a database intended for recording details of criminal offences and subject to checks by vetting officers when people apply for jobs, as we've heard from the noble lords. My lords, I hope you can see the dangers here. Because of the subjective nature of the NCHI guidelines, there's a real possibility of abuse of the system by people acting in bad faith. The NCHI guidance means that unfounded, spurious and malicious reports can be filed and never tested, let alone the fact that this data gathering is a distraction for the police from pursuing real criminals. I was contacted by one person ahead of this debate who said, I had a visit from the police because a member of staff offended another member of staff who works for me. No crime reported. The police spoke to me for 40 minutes. In the meantime, the 200 pallets that I reported stolen the week before didn't generate a phone call or a visit. And then there is the chilling effect of NCIH's on free speech, as so vividly spelt out by other noble lords. But NCHIs can act as a threat, a kind of surveillance of free speech for people who will say these will eventually lead to crime. And anyone who is following the fate of gender-critical feminists at the moment, constantly accused of hate by a particular brand of trans activists, will understand just how damaging that is to free speech. I know that this government tell us all the time that they are keen to oppose cancel culture. And I fear that inadvertently, these NCHIs contribute to that very censorious climate of denunciation, the very toxic climate of hate that we're all keen to combat. I therefore urge the government to consider these amendments carefully and remove this contradictory anomaly, which I fear brings the police and the criminal law into disrepute.